Amen. In Exodus chapter 5, there's a section of scripture about Moses and Aaron and Pharaoh, and it's kind of a conversation that happens where Aaron and Moses are pleading with Pharaoh to say, hey, the Israelites haven't really had any time of worship in a while. And so we would love to be able to go out and spend some time in worship. Would you give the Israelites a break and let this happen? Now, Pharaoh, being the nice guy he is, replied and says, I don't know your God, and why would I even let that happen? And so basically says absolutely not to Pharaoh or to Moses and Aaron. And so there's this conversation continues to happen, and Moses is like, please just let us go and make the sacrifice. Now think about this for a minute. The Israelites have been under bondage for, we're not sure, it's between 400 and 200 years. Now just let that sink in your mind a minute. That's a long time. That's a long time to be in slavery. That's generations. That means that some people, every person sitting as an Israelite had never experienced freedom, ever, in worshiping God. They had always been under the control of Pharaoh, right? So again, Moses goes to save his people. First, give us a chance. Let us go and worship. He says, no, absolutely not. Pharaoh finally says, you want rest from your work. And then that goes to Exodus chapter 5, verse 4. Listen to what it says. So then it says this. It says, but the king of Egypt said to them, Moses and Aaron, why do you take the people away from their work? Get back to your burdens. That's like, wow, yeah. Get back to your burdens. Now, do you catch what's happening here? Pharaoh's like, yeah, hey, you guys are kind of annoying me right now. I have to build these huge structures, and I need the Israelites to do it. So stop bothering me with this and get back to your burdens. Get back to what you guys should be doing. Verse 5, and Pharaoh said, behold, the people of the land are now many, and you make them rest from their burdens. It's kind of a sarcastic remark, saying, and you make them rest from their burdens. Like they're lazy. You're making them lazy. And go ahead and skip on. And this is the same day Pharaoh commanded the taskmasters of the people and their foremen and said this, you shall no longer give straw to make bricks as in the past. Let them go and gather straw for themselves. But the number of bricks that they made in the past you shall impose on them. You shall by no means reduce it, for they are idle. Therefore they cry, let us go and offer sacrifice to our God. Let heavier work be laid on the men, that they may labor at it and pay no regard to lying words. So let me put this all together. Basically, Pharaoh says, forget it. And in fact, for all the Israelites who are working, I no longer want them to just make brick, but I want them to provide their own straw for making brick. So he almost doubles the work on them. Now, if you're an Israelite, that's all you know is brick. I mean, think about it. Day in, day out, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, brick. We make brick, we build with brick, we mix for brick. I mean, it's brick after brick. That's all they know. From the time they're born to the time they die, that's all they know is brick. And here Pharaoh at this place is saying, hey, I used to provide straw for your brick. Now you have to go out and provide your own straw, but I want you to produce as much brick as you did before. The burden's even deeper. But again, when I look at the life of an Israelite, all they know is brick. Brick this, brick that, wake up doing brick. Now, if that's true, then the moment I'm able to work, I start producing brick. So let's say Roger could probably produce brick. Well, maybe a little bit older. At what age do kids start working, right? Or they're able to actually do something and and so at that moment in time, they begin to work, and they work nonstop until they die, or until they're no longer able to make brick. And when they're no longer able to make brick, what happens? they are killed. Why? Because why would Pharaoh take care of someone who isn't producing something for him? That's the whole point of their existence for generations. The only reason you live is because you make brick, day in, day out. Oh, Pharaoh personally owned you. Your worth is measured by the amount of bricks. I wonder if in that world, if you have the elite brick makers over here, the guys who are like super quick and amazing at building bricks, and then you have like the lower guys where I would be, the guys who are like making 10 bricks a day compared to like 100 bricks. And I'm sure there was all these systems and places where, because that's all they knew. And the moment in the day they weren't able to make brick, and you're going to get tired of me saying make brick, but I'm going to say it over and over again, they were useless. Now hold on to that thought just for a moment. Just kind of put that to the side of your brain if you can. Turn over to Genesis chapter 1 with me. Genesis chapter 1. What happens in Genesis 1? Anybody know? Wow, yeah. God creates everything, right? I mean, it's pretty amazing. So God creates everything. God begins to create the universe. He creates life as we know it. He creates trees that create leaves, that create fruit, where the fruit bears seed, and that seed falls and bears and plants and bears more fruit and more trees. He creates systems and structures. He creates processes. He kind of sets all creation on a path, right, where it just begins to multiply and grow. And it's just an incredible, God's creation is incredible. And in the midst of all this creation, he creates man. Okay? And then look at what it says in Genesis chapter 1, verse 31. And then we're going to go through 2, 3. Actually, it's right up here. He says this. He says, and God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was what? Very good, right? It was very good. And there was evening and there was morning the sixth day. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. I love that. I mean, could you imagine creating all of the universe as we know it? Everything. I mean, it kind of makes you feel really small, really quick. And then it says this. And on the seventh day, God finished his work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all of his work that he had done. So God blessed the seventh day and made it holy. Holy means to set apart for a purpose or a cause or a reason. So God blessed the seventh day and he made it holy because on it, God rested from all his work that he had done in creation. Okay? So you have this picture that God creates and then he rests. God creates for 6 days and he stops creating. Just boom, stops. So if God is resting and not creating, is he still the creator? Yeah, I'm just kind of asking a rhetorical question. If God is taking a break, at any time during that break, does he stop being the creator or is he still the creator? He's still the creator. Is he still the same God as he was when he was creating and inventing? Yeah, he's still the same God. God's value, worth, and who he is not defined by what he does. Right? We don't look at God and go, if God's not doing something, then he isn't something, right? He could stop creating and still be the creator because he's God. Okay, that's what. So God is God. It isn't dependent on what he does, or even more, God's value isn't dependent upon whether he's creating or not. Okay, his value is outside of that realm of if I'm creating something or not. So this is the question I've asked myself, and I'm asking you as I was studying through this, just being totally convicted. Can I be me if I'm not doing anything? Can I be me if I'm not creating anything or doing anything? As a person, can I be me? Or maybe this. Do I need to be doing something to have worth and value? Do I need to be, on top of things? Do I need to make sure I get my work done? And because I do those things, or because I'm working, or because I'm this, or because I'm that, that brings me value. Do I need to be doing that to have worth of value? Or are you apart from what you produce? Right? Because we live in a world where we have a job, right? And when you ask somebody, hey, what do you do? Right? They always answer their job. Isn't that interesting? Like, tell me about, and because we define ourselves by what we do, or what happens when you introduce a speaker? You introduce what? All of their accomplishments, or you have a book, and in the foreword of the book, it lists all the accomplishments of the speaker or the writer of that book. Why? Because we look at our accomplishments, and if someone has more accomplishments, they have more value, and if someone has less accomplishments, they don't have as much value. And so we live in that kind of world. And so I have to ask myself, am I me apart from my peer? What if I stop producing today? In the sense of producing value for the church here because I'm a pastor? What if all of a sudden I just am of no value anymore? What if I stop producing money for my family? What if I stop? Do you understand? What happens to me in that? What happens to me in that? Or is my life just defined by my bricks? The day in, day out, bricks in my life. Turn over to Exodus 20, because this is what the brick people were struggling with. Now think about this. All you know is bricks. Go back to the brick. All you know is bricks, day in, day out, generation after generation. We know the formula for bricks. We know how much straw goes in the bricks. We know exactly how much mud. We know what time of season, what kind of clay mixes with brick. We know all those things. We know the formulas. Our whole life has been surrounded by brick. That's all I've ever done. And then Moses comes and removes me from brick world. And I'm wandering in the wilderness. Think about this. And you're got nowhere to go yet, but you're free. Now, what were these guys thinking? Wandering out in the wilderness, they're free, they no longer under Pharaoh's, they're not slaves to Pharaoh anymore, but they're not producing anything anymore. It's interesting. They want to go back. Do you remember that part where they actually want to? Why would they want to go back? Because it was easier, right? Because they received things for doing their work. They didn't have to trust, believe, or have faith, right? And all of a sudden, they're in this place where it's wild. It's wilderness. And my life is no longer defined by my bricks, so therefore my value is gone. So you have the people who were, making 100 bricks a day compared to the people, and everybody's even now because nobody's making bricks. So their value's gone. What's going on? So God comes in and says, the 10 Commandments. Hey, if this is going to work, I need to show you the kind of life I want you to live, right? I need to pull you from what you were living here and transform you into a new way of thinking. Because all you've known for generations was how to make brick and how to be under bondage. And now you're free, and now you have choice, and now there are so many decisions you have to make. And so I'm going to put you in a place where create kind of a new reality for you. I guess if you want to say a new reality. Maybe a new rhythm of life, because the old rhythm of life is not going to work when you're free. And so the 10 Commandments come into play, okay? This is big picture stuff. Look at what happens in Exodus chapter 20, verse 8. So it says, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Now, the Sabbath basically means this. It means to cease or to stop, or to rest, okay? I mean, really at the core. There's a lot that goes on beyond that, but that really is what it means. So, remember the Sabbath day, the day of rest, to keep it holy. And then he says, 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. Now, just kind of hold it there. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. Now God is affirming work here. Work is good. I don't know if you know this, but the Hebrew word for work and worship are pretty much the same word. So the ancient Hebrews believed that my work was actually worship. It wasn't like if I was a pastor and a stockbroker, the pastor's more spiritual than the stockbroker. Both could worship God in their job, right? And so the idea was that work and worship were kind of this hand in hand. It's the word avodah. And it's a very interesting word. And so they believed at the core that I can worship God with my hands, with my mind, with the work, and that's an offering to Him. Why do you think they were able to go generation after generation and still have a relationship with God? It's because they believed they were worshiping God in part by the work they were offering up and giving. Okay, does that make sense? And so you have this picture. So no matter what you do, your labor can be meaningful. So even those of you who are engineers, your job is important. Your job, it's not supposed to be a joke and nobody laughed, so. You know, and if you work at a bank, if you work at Starbucks, if you're a mom, a stay-at-home mom, all of those work, they all have value, right? There's worship involved in all that. You can be a worshiper with whatever job you do. You don't just work at the place, you work for God at that place, wherever you're working. So that's pretty much the view. So God is affirming work. He's not saying you don't work, but what he's saying is, he goes a little deeper, and he's saying in verse 10, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God, and on it you shall not do any work, you, your son or your daughter, your male servant, your female servant, or your livestock, or the sojourner who is within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made the heaven and the earth and the sea, and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Do you catch what he's saying? He's saying, this is how you used to live. Brick world, boom, boom, boom. Now I want to transform you, right? I want to move you. I want to cause a new rhythm in your life where I don't want it every single day. Work, 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 work. And in that's where you find your value. Are you tracking with me? You're thinking, what does this have to do with parenting? We'll get to it. Don't worry. Because there's this ceasing, this stopping, this resting. You and I have been going and going and going and going, and it never stops. And God said, if you want the rhythm of life that I created you with, then you have to stop. You have to remember that your value doesn't come by what you produce. Your value comes by the fact that you belong to me. Whew. Gives me goosebumps when I say it. Because it's true. So I don't have to be the top. I don't have to rise to the best. What I have to do is understand my place and that God loves me, and in that, whatever He chooses to do is great. Because He's the one I get my value from. He's the one. So it's more than just resting, right? Because God created and He rested. And what was He doing up there? Was He just saying, like, I'm bored? Like, what was God doing for a day of, I got all this extra time on my hands. I'm just going to sit around. Like, really, and that's what we think, right? Because we think in value. We think, well, this hour, we're going to get this much out of it, right? I work this long, I'm going to make this much money, I get that sale, I get this, and we're stuck in this crazy rhythm that's nonstop, and we live in a culture and a world that is nonstop, and God says, no, I don't want you to live that way. That's the world's rhythm, this is my rhythm, and He pulls us out, and He says, if you want to experience life that I want for you, then this is how you have to live. Remember, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. It's not a legalistic thing. It was for our benefit that we understand it. And I'm not here to debate whether we need to have Sabbath. That's not the point. The point is, in the rhythm of life, what God was showing His people and showing us today is that our value doesn't come by our production. Our value doesn't come by our production. Your worth or value does not come from the amount of bricks you produce. And at the end of your life, when you stand before God and say, here's my huge bank account, here's this, here's that, I was like, I don't really care about that. Because I'm not Pharaoh. How did you treat your family? How did you treat your neighbor? How did you treat the guy at Starbucks? How did you treat those who were hard to... Those are the things that God's going to value. So a new rhythm is where my worth comes from... Let me see how I can say this. My worth comes from, not from what I do, but from who I am. I know I'm a child of God, and therefore I know I'm worth something, and because of that, that's where my value comes. Rather than saying, I'm going to work hard to gain a value that's already there. Wow. For me, that rocks my world, because it's easy for me to line up all my, accomplishments and da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and God's like, yeah, nice. But I want you to understand that your value doesn't come. You know where your value comes from? The fact that I created you. The fact that you're mine. The fact that I have a plan for your life. Wow. So no matter what, we join God in his work and do that. So Bill, I know what you're asking. Bill, why, what does that have to do with parenting? What does it do with raising kids? I think it has everything to do. Why? Because we live in a maximized world. And for those of you who are teenagers in the room or younger, you are stuck right in this right now. We live in a maximized world. And what do I mean by that is we maximize everything in our kids. We maximize everything in our culture to be better, quicker, faster, more amazing. Our culture is raising peak performance kids. That's what it's about. Right? And it really is. And is it bad? Again, I'm not ripping on, helping your kid get better at sports or anything, or school. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is when that overtakes, and that's the purpose and that's the reason, we got to be careful. When we have a 3-year-old and we're like, wow, look they picked up a drumstick and they had some rhythm, and so we hire the best drum instructor in the country to come and teach our kids because we think that if we give them all this experience, they're going to be the best drummer in the world, and so we push them and prod them towards being that best drummer, and they just wanted to play drums. Right? So we maximize them, we move them, we try and make them the best of the best. And when we do that, what are we doing? We're telling them brick world, brick after brick after brick, because when you produce, when you're better, that's what's valuable. And God says, no. That's not where we find our value. Are those things bad in themselves? No, but if we use them to find our value, our world puts worth and value calculated on performance. Guys, I was fired from a job because I didn't perform well. Do you know how hard that is to hear? Do you know how broken I was? And maybe many of you are nodding your heads, you've experienced the same thing. If you don't keep your numbers up, you are not worth it. Hey, nothing personal, just business. Get your numbers up because that's what we hired you for. And at the end of the day, if you don't have, and the stress that you feel right now, especially those of you who are in sales, sometimes it can just drive you crazy because you can't keep up. And there will be a day when here's the problem with it. You get higher numbers, then they expect more numbers. And then you get higher numbers, and there comes a point where you cannot get those numbers anymore. And you know that end is coming. And then it freaks us out even more, and you're going to go home and cry right now. Because it's true. And then we find our value in that. And they go, how can I get another job if I can't do this? And I didn't have enough value in this job. And all of a sudden they want to hire me and they ask why I was fired. It's because I didn't produce the numbers. So they're going to want the numbers. Because our world values performance. You know what breaks my heart? When I look at the older people in our world, how they get pushed aside. I worked with this one pastor who was he was 70. The guy was a genius, a whiz, just amazing with people, highly relational, had ran 3 or 4 businesses, and his words were never taken seriously because, well, at that point in his life, he wasn't producing anything. And his value was based upon, well, you're not producing anything. But he had so much wisdom from the world. He had so much wisdom and and it was all, and you know, he wasn't fighting for, you know, his voice. He wasn't, but it's so much to offer. And what happens? What do we do in our society? What do we do? We push because someone's not producing or someone's not what they used to be. We push them out. That's not Jesus' world, people. God's world is so different. And he pulls us out of that and says, you're in the room because of who you are. Now, of course, when you're talking about leading and other things, you can't have everyone in the room. I get that. But we have to value people, all kinds of people, because God made those people. Are you tracking with me here? Are you tracking with me? Now, again, there's a reason. I'm talking about this with parents. So this whole maximized world. How many of you seen the movie Gladiator? Did you guys see that? Yeah, okay. You saw the TNT version, right? Not the our version. So I was watching that the other day. We were watching it, and it's really hot up here right now. I'm starting to sweat. We were watching Gladiator, and there was a scene where Caesar's son, and I forgot his name, killed his dad. Do you remember that scene? And it was a crazy scene because when he killed his dad, Caesar's son killed his dad, he said, all I wanted to do was please you. All I wanted to do was make you proud. I cannot tell you how many times I've heard this when I'm counseling college students and high school students. And they make decisions based upon one thing, I gotta please my father. And there are some deep daddy wounds. And maybe you even have some deep daddy wounds where your dad was just never proud of you. Your dad never looked at you and hugged you and thanked you for being who you were. But it was always what you could produce. Oh, okay, great. You want to be this. I want you to be a doctor, and you're not a doctor. You're only, a nurse or whatever, and you haven't made it all the way. And so you always feel like your value came from what you produced, not who you were. And this goes all over the place in our world. And I think we don't want to do that to our kids, but we end up doing that because we live in this world. And so if your kid gets a B instead of an A, how do you react? And you're pushing them and you're saying, hey, you got to get into that college, you got to get that scholarship, you got to get this, and your kid's going crazy, I got a B, and stressed out and freaked out because they got a B. A B's awesome. I was hoping I'd get a C when I was in high school. I'm just saying, and here's what happens in our world. You want the reality? When we push our kids to be high-performance kids, you know what happens in our world? They cheat. Because their value comes more in what they want you to be pleased than the fact that they're going to cheat against God and the school. And you guys, it's rampant everywhere. You think SAT scores, the kids are smart, they cheat. And they're not doing it for them, they're doing it for you. They're doing it for you, so you'll get off their back. They're doing it because it's performance-based, and as long as I keep up the grades, keep up the numbers, keep up hey, sports, if I'm going to get you this coach. I had a friend who his son, man, he got him this football coach, this quarterback coach. He's like, you're going to be the best quarterback. Pushed him, and he didn't get into college. He didn't get a scholarship. And it was just like, you blew it. But he didn't blow it. Do you see what I'm saying? And we push people, and we push our kids, and we put burdens on them. And I'm afraid that we may be putting a burden of worth and value on our kids that they shouldn't have. So what happens when they can't keep up? They break down. The more experiences, more education, more training, be the best at everything, maximize your potential, rise to the top. Hey, that's fine. But understand what that's going to create. What that's going to create. So how can we teach our kids to live in a new rhythm? How can we pull our kids out of the way this world works? And you guys as teenagers right now, how can you think differently? How can we pull you out of that thinking and put you into a mentality where hey, this is what God has for you. Number one, you're not valued by the bricks you create. Your value comes from God. That's where you got to start. You got to start that your value, that the God of the universe died for you. Oh my gosh. And in that, you live differently. So what are 4 ways we can do that? What are 4 ways we can raise kids to a new rhythm? Turn to Ephesians chapter 6 with me. Ephesians chapter 6. Are you guys tracking with me? I'm yes, no. Okay. Because I'm a little sweaty. Whew. Sorry, Michelle, my wife. She's got to do my laundry. She doesn't have to. She loves to. She does. My wife's awesome. I love laundry. She's just amazing. And I honestly, is that true, babe? Okay, please, because I think I'm getting all these like women. You're a terrible husband. Ephesians chapter 6. Let's just skip down for sake of time. There we go. Verse 4. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. Now, last week we talked a little bit about that idea of putting your kids in a situation, right, where they might get hurt. They're spiritually, mentally, emotionally, but you don't want to overwhelm them, right? It's okay as long as you're around them and you're supporting them, but you don't want to overwhelm them. This is a little different. This is fathers, do not provoke your children to anger. And you guys, this is me. My son's back there. He can admit to this. I struggle with this. In the Roman world, provoking was normal. In fact, it was encouraged. If your kid was doing something, you could actually just tell him to leave the house and never see him again. So this is countercultural to us today. And so it says, don't provoke your children, don't exasperate your children. Well, how do you exasperate your children? And I'm just going to go through a couple of things here. Perfectionism, that your kids become objects to maximize, right? So I'm going to live vicariously, right? You see this on the baseball field where the parents are in the stands pushing their kids to do better, right? I've done it. I've been there. I understand. Because we want our kids to be best, and we push them. We want to make them perfect, because if we make them perfect, they'll be a better adult, right? So we have all these things. If they get perfect grades, they'll get better scholar. And so we think perfection, and so we lead them and push them really hard, and sometimes we could push them too hard. But we say to ourselves, well, it's good for them. It's good for them for us to put, and no, it's not. Because you can push them to the point where you're going to break their spirit. You're going to break their heart. And they're going to change and transition from pleasing God to pleasing you. And once you do that, you're in big trouble. I had a friend of mine who ran a ministry, and man, he struggled so hard between pleasing God and pleasing his dad. And what I mean by that is his dad wanted him to have this huge ministry and these huge expectations. And so he started doing things that were unethical to grow the ministry. But to him it wasn't wrong, because all he was doing was trying to please his dad, because he just wanted his dad's approval, that whole thing. And so we can't have perfectionism. We can't have our children be objects to maximize. To be harsh, to have double standards, to not let them question us. Now, is it okay to have your kids question you? Now, again, this is age appropriate. Is it okay? Or do you just say, well, that's the way it is and I don't want to hear it? Let me ask you this. How does God respond to us? If you view God as God sitting up there saying, well, that's the way it is, I really don't care, just do it, then that's probably the way you're going to react to your kids. And you know what? That's the way your kids are going to react to you. But let's move them out of that world. It's okay to have a question. Does that mean you change everything for them? Absolutely not. But you walk them through it. You coach them, teach them. You don't exasperate them. You listen to them. So number one, don't exasperate your kids. Don't frustrate your kids. Number two is this: wherever you're at, be there. Wow, that's brilliant, Bill. Wherever you're at, be there. What do I mean by this? Wherever you're at, be there. You could be on the floor playing Legos, and you're thinking about work. You could be sitting at the dinner table and your whole family's there and your mind is disconnected. You're in brick world. I got to produce this. You hear? Because that's what happens. And over, we're in this place where wherever we miss being in. Hold on. Wait. I seriously have to take this call. Hold on. Hello? Yeah, what's up? No, I'm just doing this teaching thing right now. I'm at church. Yeah. What am I doing? We're going to light off fireworks and stuff. Yeah. No, it's cool. The lead pastor's cool here. He won't fire me for this, I'm sure. He's pretty good. Yeah. Hey, did you guys keep it down? I'm trying to talk. So, hold on. Yeah. Hey, let me call you back because I got to take care of this right now. All right, bye. All right. No, I didn't really have a phone call. Yeah. Did I fake any of you out, though? Did some of you really believe I did? Okay. I'm trying to get really good. Maybe. Okay. How did you feel when I picked up that phone? What did I just do? You know what I told you? I told you you're not important. I told you whoever's on that phone means more than who's in this room. Whew. How many times do I do that to my kids, my wife? Right? I'm not fully present in the moment. And I tell them, oh yeah, I love you. Hold on, I'll be right back. And I'm talking to someone on the phone. Now, again, if there's an emergency, I get it. But do you get it? If that's more often than not, the value this is what I'm not saying, but I'm really telling them is, whoever is calling me, I love them more than you. And you can rearrange that any way you want, or they're more important than you in this moment. Maybe that's a better one. That's what I'm saying. And so how can you and I be fully present, teaching our kids that there isn't another world out there that's more important? Could you imagine if Jesus would have done the same? I mean, he came to this earth, emptied himself, right? And could you imagine if he was like, hey, guys, you know what? I'm just really tired of this. I'm going to go back to be with the Father because this really stinks. But no, he was fully present, fully aware, fully with us when we needed him most. And so if we want to live in a place where we have a new rhythm, we need to have times where we disconnect, where we pull this out and we pull this way of living and say, you know what? It's just us tonight. It's just us. And maybe if you're just married and have kids, it's just you and your wife. You're no TV, and maybe it's just you and your family or you and your grandkids, whatever that is, and you put away the phone. You put away the phone. Wherever you are, be there. Put your phone down. Number 3 is slow down. And I'd love to take like 10 minutes just to relax, but I've got to hurry up because I've got to get this sermon done. You like that? That was really good. Slow down. And here, duh, Bill. I was sitting studying at the beach. Sorry. It's what you do when you're a pastor. So, I have this old Ford Expedition, and I park it up on the side of the road, and I set up this little work area in the back. It's awesome. Bring my dog out there, and I just spend 6 hours studying over this, praying, asking God to lead. Just and so I'm out there, and one thing I noticed was people where I was at Point Magoo out here. People constantly coming up to look at the ocean. And so all day I'm sitting out there, and it's probably about 40, 50 people would stop, and every single one of them had their phone. And every single one of them would come out, and they'd be like, oh, this is so beautiful, right? And they would take their selfie and be like, look, boom, they take a picture of them in the ocean. There's this group of 3 girls. I wanted to get it on video, but I thought that might look really weird if I'm videotaping 3 girls. But it was just one of those moments. But they were like, oh, come on, sit on this rock and pose this way. And here's the thing. They weren't even looking at the ocean. Do you get it? All they were worried about was this, of showing everyone how pretty the ocean was, but they never experienced it themselves. Whew. They never were able, and again, I don't know, maybe they were busy, but but they were living this life of, hey, yeah, everything's beautiful, but in reality, they never experienced the beautiful. They never slowed down. They got to get it, hey, look at, we're valuable, look, we're at the beach, it's beautiful things. Living in this false reality. Slow down. You are not a machine. You are more than what you produce. You are more than what you produce. Eat dinner often. Eat dinner often. One last verse, and then we're going to close with this. Go to Matthew chapter 3. Matthew chapter 3. So Jesus gets baptized by John. Chapter 3, verse 16, and it says this. It's not going to come up, we don't have it on the screen, but it says this. It says, and when Jesus was baptized, immediately he went up from the water, and behold, the heavens were opened up to him. And he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and coming to rest on him. And behold, a voice from heaven said, this is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. I don't want you to forget this. Listen, here's something you'll notice. He hasn't done anything. He hasn't done miracles. It's not like he's going out doing all kinds of stuff yet. His ministry's starting right here. Was God pleased with him? Absolutely. Not because he did something, but because of who he was. And obviously, God, we know that he's going to do incredible things. But do you catch this? In parenting, it's not performance-based. It's because who your kids are. And maybe some of you need to sit down right now after this service with your kids and say, I am well pleased with you. Not because of what you do. Not because you get good grades, not because you're so outgoing, not because you're good at sports, not because of this and this and this. I'm pleased with you because of who you are, and God gave you to me to take care of. And there is nothing in this world that will ever stop me from loving you. There is nothing in this world that could separate you from my love. You could walk away from me, you could do this, but I am well pleased. Why? Because of who you are. Because that's the same thing that God says to us. Whoa. If you never got an A again, if you never put on the uniform again, if you don't get into that college, that doesn't matter to me because you and I am well pleased. I am well pleased with you. So wouldn't it be amazing if we can raise a generation, this next one, where they are a generation that is pulled up and they live in a different rhythm. Where they find their value, their intrinsic worth, not by what they do, not by the bricks they produce, right? But by who they are. And maybe some of you, I don't know, you might need to go and maybe even make a phone call to your kid, even though you're older and maybe your kid's 30 or 40, and you need to say to them, you know what? I just want you to know that I'm pleased with you. I am pleased with who God has made you to be. And maybe they didn't take the path you wanted. Maybe they didn't choose the things you would have chosen. But this would open up that conversation and that love to know that they are cared for. And it will stop the madness for them and their kids. God, I thank you for this group and for this challenge for all of us. Lord, let us be people who live in a different rhythm. Lord, who take your value on us, Lord, that we wouldn't seek the value of the world, but we would seek the value that we do things out of our love for you and because we have worth in you, not for your worth or for anybody else's. Help us to live in that place. Help us to live in that rhythm. Help me, God, to parent that way. Help me to love my kids and look them in the eye and tell them that they are valuable and I am well pleased.